And you are now behind enemy lines. Hey there, how you doing, America? Gene Baradelli here with you. So glad that you're joining us, whether you're listening at www.behind, whether you are listening to us on one of our many rebroadcast outlets, whether it be AM radio, FM radio, internet radio. Glad you're tuning in. Or if we are tagging along with you wherever you're traveling as a podcast, thanks for picking us up. We really appreciate it. Love to see where we're going. And where we're going with this show is a discussion of the literal exploding heads of mainstream liberal-leaning media. I'm not going to go through what Sean Hannity calls them, and I'm not going to copy what he does, but we're going to be talking about those type of media people. And honestly, folks, we'll be talking about how they have fallen in love with the anonymous source. And they're doing so in an effort to destroy the Trump administration, to destroy Donald Trump, and to destroy possibly their own credibility. Clearly, it's not their intention, but it looks to me that that's the road that they're heading down, is to destroy their own credibility. Let's start looking at some stories right now to see exactly what we're talking about. Earlier this week, the Washington Post, in what is now a famous, I dare even call it notorious story, says that based upon anonymous sources that it has both within and outside of government, that Donald Trump, in his meeting with Russian dignitaries and Kislyak and all those people that he's been getting in trouble with and supposedly in cahoots with and all this other nonsense, anonymous sources claim that Donald Trump leaked classified information to Russia during that White House visit. And they're saying it's a big breach. They said code word level information is what they're talking about. Now, in intelligence circles, that means, intelligence assets in the field that can't be identified, that are providing information. And in this particular case, they're talking about outside state actors. We're not talking about our own intelligence assets. We're talking about some other country's assets. The New York Times later on says that they believe, based upon anonymous sources, that it was Israel that provided certain data regarding ISIS attacks in Syria, and by Donald Trump letting the cat out of the bag about the town or the city or the place from which the information came from, there's claims out there from supposed experts, and then mainly liberal experts, claiming that Donald Trump, by giving that information, shared too much, burned the asset, basically, burned another country's intelligence gathering techniques, and may have harmed our relations with another country. Now, Donald Trump, for his part, has said, he basically said, I'm the president, I can divulge it if I want to. I determine what's classified, I determine what's not classified, and this is a common problem that, that Russia and America have vis-a-vis ISIS. So we're going to put this information out into the open and disclose it to the Russians in an effort to make them more accountable to dealing with ISIS. That was, of course, after his administration did some major damage control and pushed back extremely hard against the Washington Post story. National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster, General McMaster, going on record multiple times in 2 days, basically within a 12-hour period, if you really look at it, an 18-hour period, claiming that the information is incorrect in the Washington Post story. There were very few people in the room. That included himself, the Deputy National Security Advisor, and the Secretary of State Tillerson, and their staff, and a few Russian envoys, if you want to call them that. And that what it all comes down to is the information provided by the Washington Post is inaccurate. The president did not disclose any classified information. Everything was already in the public domain, and this is much ado about nothing. And of course, like I said, all this is based upon anonymous sources. Now, the anonymous source, let's go into that a little bit. We don't know who it is, but here's what we know about anonymous sources in general. It is normally the practice of media to use anonymous sources when A, the source itself is credible, not only to the writer, but also to the editor, because presumably editors will ask about sources and it'll all stay in-house, and the editor can judge for themselves whether it's a credible source or not. Second thing that most news agencies do is they will find some sort of corroboration from a second source before publishing an anonymous source's information. An anonymous source is only anonymous, really, to the reader, to the consumer of the media. Everyone else supposedly knows about it, and what the paper is doing, what the media company is doing, I should say, is saying, you should trust us based upon our record of credibility that this person we're talking to is indeed credible. That's what they're asking for. Washington Post, New York Times, they are asking their readers to say to them, believe us because this is what we say. Don't believe what everyone else is saying that's on record. Don't believe what H.R. McMaster is saying. Don't believe what Rex Tillerson is saying. Don't believe what Donald Trump is saying. Believe us because we really know, quote unquote, what's going on here. So let's review what actually is known in this particular Washington Post story. And by the way, folks, there's going to be more of this to come because later on in the week, another story using anonymous sources. You're going to get tired of me saying this word, anonymous source. It's all in the same purview, really, of staking the credibility of the media agency to the people who are reading it. And whether or not, A, it's an acceptable practice, and B, whether you should believe it or not. But let's talk about what we know. Here's what's known. Washington Post cites anonymous sources charging that President Trump unintentionally disclosed classified information garnered from third-party actors pertaining to terrorist activities that would affect both the United States and Russian citizens. The White House and the Kremlin both deny that the information exchange was classified. Which leads me to ask, if that is what is known, why is this even a story? Do we have a problem with the president sharing information that both agree isn't classified amongst actors with a common goal vis-a-vis stopping ISIS? Is that what we have the problem with? Or is it the problem, or is this creating a problem, really? Because the anonymous source is claiming that, well, this wasn't what the president says it is. It was indeed classified information, and there's a major problem here. And some people would even argue that, given the lack of detail that the public on-the-record sources are giving, that one might say that your initial instinct is that there's a cover-up there somewhere because the denial comes after the allegation is made, even though the allegation is probably unfounded in the public domain. So from this known information, let's just talk about some reasonable presumptions we can make based upon the known information. Presumption number one. I presume, or at least I hope, that the anonymous sources were not in the room when this meeting was happening. I don't think that these sources were in the room because, based upon the accounts that we're reading, this information was shared secondhand to the quote-unquote anonymous sources. The secondhand info, which, I think we summarized pretty well, is denied by everybody. But the instinct is, again, why should we believe in government? Or, if you're a liberal, Trump is a liar and I don't believe a word he says. But you see, that allows the reader to fall into the trap that the Washington Post is playing here. Washington Post is playing on mistrust of government and Trump hatred, Trump derangement syndrome, whatever you want to call it, to assume a sense of false credibility that their sources are actually true, when at best they are further down the chain from the people who are telling you on the record that nothing happened that would be so untoward, or that would be classified, or that would be a poor practice. It's almost like a bad game of telephone, folks. Who do you believe? The source or the secondhand information that is coming out from people, A, who weren't in the room, and B, admittedly by the Washington Post, are not even in government? Because they claim that their quote-unquote anonymous sources are no longer in government jobs. Some are and some aren't. Well, what kind of source is that? We have the people who were actually in the room. We have the records that were generated as a result of the people being actually in the room. Versus secondhand information garnered by current and former lower-level employees, and they gotta be lower-level, folks, because we're talking about the National Security Advisor and Secretary of State, and the President of the United States. By definition, they're lower-level people. And they're trying to tell you that they know better based upon their secondhand back-channel information, or however it may have been obtained. It may have been obtained on record. It may have been part of their job. Who knows? But they're trying to tell you that they know better than the primary source information. That's telling you absolutely not, incorrect, no classified information came out. Come on, folks. To me, the next logical question from all this, and based upon these reasonable presumptions that we're making here together, is that because it is almost part of our political culture to mistrust government, our country is based upon a mistrust of a central government, right? That's what our founders were trying to discourage by creating a federal system and creating, this idea of American federalism. Why does this story have heads exploding? The answer has to be because there is a premeditated agenda, either by the sources or by the media, to ruin Trump. Now, that may be my own bias showing. I don't know. But how can you come to any other conclusion than that when you're looking at what's going on here? This has to be some organized method. And by the way, the problem with anonymous sources, no one can cross-examine them. No one can view the information that the reporter has been given or was told. And we'll get to that a little later, because it gets even more ridiculous, by the way. You can't cross-examine it. You can't test the veracity of it by confronting the source. And that leaves a very big gap in between what the official quote-unquote story is and what the off-the-record story is. And it leads to the problems that we have right now. The Trump administration are fighting ghosts. Not only are they fighting ghosts, they're fighting ghosts who you don't see, you don't know who they are, you can't identify, but they keep popping up and they keep getting the nod and the wink from the liberal media outlets like the Washington Post. Now, by the way, you want to talk about an all-out war on the Trump administration. Check out the article in the Daily Wire showing the reaction of employees of the Washington Post celebrating, doing their own little victory dance after the story that was printed by them went viral. They were patting themselves on the back, glad-handing, high-fiving. They think they did their job for truth, justice, and the American way, and that job is to take out Donald Trump. Make no mistake about it, folks. That's the primary motivation here. It's not to provide information to America. Listen, we had Bob Dvorak on a couple of weeks back, and maybe I should play a portion of that interview in the next segment to remind us of the state of media as it currently stands. Because, folks, it is not the days of Woodward and Bernstein where you had credible people using anonymous sources properly to report on real wrongdoing. Today, the media personalities want to be the stars. That wasn't the case a generation ago, or even further back. You didn't get into journalism to get famous. It was a job. You had a responsibility to the truth. It may be corny to say, but that's kind of what it was all about. It was about keeping people accountable. And clearly there's more information today than there was then, and there's a lot more consumption of information than there was then because of the internet and because of social media. But it also means that we have lower quality people employed in journalism, especially because journalism is now no longer a public trust. It is a business, and it's big business. It's